This is Duke University.
So good evening. Thank you. I'd like to welcome you to the closing or capstone event for the Young Scholars Summer Institute here at Duke. It's a collaboration between our Samuel DuBois Cook Center on Social Equity and the Durham Public Schools. The Summer Institute is designed to provide young scholars with the opportunity to investigate a wide range of issues involving inequality and social inequity, with an eye towards trying to think about ways in which we can change those conditions. Dr. Daniel Bullock, Executive Director for Equity Affairs at DPS, has spearheaded this collaboration for 3 years with the strong support of the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Bert Lohm. Dr. Lohm was our keynote speaker last year, and he gave a moving and powerful speech. Also must thank the Nicholas School of the Environment for providing us with an ideal space for the Institute in their spectacular environmental building. I'm sure that the students, I'm sure you all have enjoyed being in that space. Our relationship with the Nicholas School, we hope, will be more sustained because we want to make sure that one of the dimensions of the work that the students do focuses on environmental justice issues. And during the course of the past 3 weeks, they had the opportunity to hear Catherine Flowers speak, an environmental justice advocate from Lowndes County, Alabama, who is one of the climate reality leaders, and she's actually, she makes an appearance in Al Gore's new film, An Inconvenient Sequel. Each year, Dr. Bullock has selected the instructional staff for the program, and he always chooses outstanding instructors. Obviously, with the students, the students and the instructors are the heart of the program, and they define its success. This year, Patrick Dahl and India Williams were the instructors for the first-year cohort, Raymond Beeman and Cheyenne Solorio for the second-year cohort, and I believe it's Mr. Dahl's second year working with the program, and Mr. Beeman is our 3-year veteran. Todd Christensen also worked with the third-year cohort with assistance from Katerina Chiopras and Imari Smith. Now, the program would not have occurred without the efforts of our administrative director, Gwen Wright, who is toward the rear there, and the program coordinator, Addison Malone. They have done, they have done yeowoman's work for this program. I'd also like to thank Joanne O'Neill, who, thank you, and Crystalline Cooksey, who have done great work for the program. Now, we're honored tonight by the presence of members of Dr. Cook's family. Mrs. Cook. His son, Sam Cook Jr., who is also a junior like I am. And his children, Sam Cook III and Alexandra Renee. So when we opened the Cook Center formally at a naming ceremony in fall 2015, the dedication described Dr. Samuel DuBois Cook as a dedicated champion of inclusion in education and human rights. And we are especially grateful that the Cook family allowed us to name the Center for Dr. Cook and that he was able to attend and participate in the naming ceremony. We also are grateful that our keynote speaker this evening also was the keynote speaker when we opened the Cook Center. She has generously agreed to join us this evening albeit via a logistically complicated path. She had to come from Cooperstown, New York, where she was attending the Baseball Hall of Fame ceremonies with her husband, Henry Aaron. Our speaker this evening, Billye Aaron, is a stellar educator, communicator, and philanthropist. She was born in East Texas in Anderson County. Now, I know a little bit about Texas because my wife and her mother are both Texans. And Texans have a unique style of independence. The county seat for Anderson County is spelled Palestine, okay? Now, I was always brought up to pronounce that as Palestine, but in Texas, it's Palestine, okay? And I can't even pronounce how Texans pronounce Marathon, Texas style, but I know my wife can. So you might ask her how it's pronounced in Texas. Now, Billye Aaron eventually attended Texas College in Tyler, Texas, and Tyler, Texas is also famous for sports aficionados as the home of Earl Campbell. She taught high school English, taught at Spelman, at Morehouse, at South Carolina State, and at Morris Brown. So from the point at which she attended undergraduate school, she's had a sustained commitment to historically black colleges and universities. And in fact, she worked for the United Negro College Fund and then has been a sustained contributor to their efforts on behalf of the private HBCUs. And we're gaining increasing knowledge about the central importance of HBCUs as institutions that produce black scholars, black physicians, black lawyers, and the like in a society where black education is frequently restricted. So the HBCUs have been historically important, and they still are important. In 1968, Billye Aaron became the co-host of the TV talk show Today in Georgia. So she was the first African-American host of a major TV program in the state of Georgia. And subsequently, she had a weekly TV show under her name, Billye, which I believe lasted for about 14 years. So she's somebody who has been in the public eye in a very, very important and significant way, in a positive way, because of the interviews that she conducted with a number of notables on her programs. Finally, I'd like to mention that she's a philanthropist, and I also would like to add that she's an activist. In addition to the work that she's done with the United Negro College Fund, she and her husband formed the Hank Aaron Chasing the Dream Foundation. She's been responsible for organizing the Freedom Fund dinner for the NAACP. She's been the director emeritus of the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund. And most recently, I mean, this is only a shorthand version of the numbers of contributions she's made, but most recently a significant contribution was made to the Morehouse Medical College, which led them to name the Billye Suber Aaron Pavilion in her honor. So we are thrilled to have her here with us this evening. Mrs. Aaron.
Thank you, Dr. Darity. I loved your introduction. You read it just as I wrote it for you to read. And I thank you. As an aside, from the time we're born to the time that we die, we're learning. We're learning lessons that will carry us throughout our lifetime. For ill or for good, we learn lessons A baby cries and waits for the mom to come running and feed it or change the diaper. A baby learns that if it cries long enough, somebody will come and give it comfort. When we are transitioning, we look to somebody to come and comfort us. If no one comes, the sad thing is that sometimes some of us transition alone. And for those of us who remain, we think how sad that no one was there to bring comfort, that no loved one showed up to bring comfort. Along life's journey, someone teaches us how to cope with life, how to make life worth living. So we find out that learning is a constant. And that's why you young scholars are here today. Every day of your life, even without you knowing it, you learn something. You don't always catalog it. You don't always go home and answer your parent, "What did you learn in school today?" Some of us say nothing. Some of us tell in sentences that turn out to be a paragraph or more what we've learned during the course of the day at school. So I'll say again, Dr. Darity, how pleased I am to be here, and to the public school teachers of Durham, North Carolina, it's a pleasure to be here, and to all of you who participate in the great center, the great Center on Social Equity that's been named for my very, very dear friend, Dr. Samuel DuBois Cook. It is my pleasure to be here to witness firsthand a closing activity of one of the premier programs of the center. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to pay homage, and that is what I feel I am doing, paying homage to my dear late friend, Dr. Samuel DuBois Cook. I see this program for young scholars as a very positive contribution to the ongoing legacy of Sam. One might say that race and racism are the most pervasive issues facing our country today. These issues have long impeded our progress as a nation. Today, regrettably, most regrettably, many of our so-called leaders continue to show disrespect, and they continue to have an insensitivity to the conditions brought on by racial discrimination. As we all know, race relations in this country continue to take a major hit from those who would like to take their country back. Civility and common decency are under siege. Language and behavior are at a new low. sending chilling signals to young people all over the country that you don't have to respect your neighbor. You don't have to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You don't have to be decent. You can say anything, you can do anything that comes to your mind. You can tweet anything and tweet anything that comes to your mind. How sad. Morality and human decency have taken a long, long cruise around the world with no return date on record. So one has to wonder how long can our country withstand this suffering and this madness? I am of the opinion that the answer to our problems may indeed lie within the Young Scholars Summer Research Program. Why? Because you are our future. You are our future. For as you experience the academic, moral, and social offerings of this program, you hopefully will be able to shed some light on this madness, on this intolerable situation. You know, you have heard and you have no doubt listened to your parents say, train up a child in the way it should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. So there is hope. There is hope. One of the good things about this program is that you can possibly have influence. You can have a voice. And you now have the opportunity to be heard. You, through the Young Scholars Institute, are being exposed to the resources and clout of one of the greatest universities in the South, or maybe in the nation, the clout of the Duke University Samuel DuBois Cook Center on Social Equity. This center is very timely in many ways. It provides an opportunity for the center to show its relevance, as well as providing an opportunity for you, the very young, to understand the social conditions under which we live. It also provides an opportunity for you to work toward solutions to a problem, to an age-old problem that grown folk have messed up and have never been able to work out. Here comes the young scholars of Duke University with a story, with an answer, and we hope you will ride on that long white pony with the answer to the problems that this country has never addressed properly and has never been able to find solutions to. Here you can have an impact. You can have an impact on the life of your community, your state, and your nation. And you can and will learn. There's that word again, learn, to identify social inequities. And you will learn their impact on your life, on your family's life, and on the lives of minorities across this country. You also come to know and appreciate the man whose life was a catalyst for this program. for he, in large measure, served as a role model and continues to, even in his death, a role model for what it means to be a scholar. He was a learned, good man, a man of impeccable character, a man of integrity and superior intellect. Sam was a kind and loving man to his wife Sylvia, to his children Karen and Doobie, and to his lovely little grandchildren. And still, he was indeed a scholar. Sam lived a life consistent with the teachings of Christianity. You are here because Sam Cooke lived. You are here because Sam Cooke dreamed himself a scholar before becoming a scholar. You are here because Sam Cooke decided at a very early age that he would not allow his circumstances, growing up poor in rural Georgia, to keep him from fulfilling his dream. He was just in the 5th grade. In the 5th grade, when his teachers noticed that he was signing his homework papers, Samuel DuBois Cook, BA, MA, PhD, in the 5th grade. As he self-prophesied, he earned his BA from Morehouse College, 2 MAs, and a PhD from the Ohio State University. Dr. Samuel DuBois Cook was a scholar extraordinaire. He lived a storied life. He excelled throughout his academic and educational pursuits. He was a Morehouse College classmate and friend of Martin Luther King Jr., and they stayed in close contact throughout Martin's life. Sam broke racial and educational barriers. He blazed uncharted trails and pathways at numerous colleges and universities and foundations. He served the longest tenure as president of Dillard University in New Orleans, Louisiana, where he was president for some 23 years. Is there any wonder why the Duke University Center on Social Equity bears his name? Young people, you are here. You are here in this program because Sam Cooke laid the foundation that you and others like you might have the opportunity to develop your talents. You are here because your teachers saw something special in you. There was something about you that signaled to them that you would do well in this type of program. We don't have time to waste. There's no time to waste on you if you don't want to better your own condition. They thought you would do well in this setting. Your parents and/or your teachers saw that gleam in your eyes, that inquisitive look on your face that suggested to them that you could benefit from this opportunity and that you could be better because you had this opportunity. They may have believed that this could be a defining moment for you. that moment when you decide that you are going to take charge of your own life, and to a great extent to your own efforts to become an educated human being. You have to decide, or you have made the decision as to what you want to make of your life, what you want to be, what you want to do. That moment when, as Michael Jackson's famous song goes, I believe it had something to do with looking in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? When you look in the mirror, do you see yourself? Do you think, I might not be the smartest kid in my class, but if I work hard, if I study, I can compete. If I work hard, I can improve my ability to express myself, my writing, my reading, my thinking. Whatever the challenge may be, I will show the world that I can meet that challenge. You are now in the stages of preparation. You are now in the stages of preparation. Prepare yourself well so that when your time comes, you will be ready. And you will not let the Duke University Samuel DuBois Cook Center on social equity down. I trust that all of you young scholars will work tirelessly to unearth and expose the social inequities that we as a people continue to face today. Remember always, it is not enough just to expose social inequities. You must work even harder to find solutions to the existing problems. On your way to a successful future, remember these words that Dr. Sam Cooke quoted often. They were written by one of his great admirers, one of his great mentors, one of the great African Americans in this country who was president of the great Morehouse College, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. And I quote, "It must be borne in mind that the tragedy of life doesn't lie in not reaching your goal. The tragedy lies in not having a goal to reach. It isn't a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, but it is a calamity not to dream. It is not a disaster to be unable to capture your ideal, but it is a disaster to not have an ideal to capture. It is not a disgrace not to reach the stars, but it is a disgrace to have no stars to reach for. Not failure, but low aim is sin." Those were the words of Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, who passed them on to Dr. Samuel DuBois Cook. And if I heard them once, I heard them 900 times from each of them. But they are words that we should all carry with us and make certain that we are on the right trail, that we are ready for the journey. And I would like to remind you These words weren't just given to Sam's students. I promise you, you heard them. You heard them, and you heard them over and over. So, like all great Americans that we study, that we appreciate, Sam Cooke was one of those. Like all great Americans, the life Sam Cooke lived and the legacy that he left will be scrutinized, will be studied, will be dissected, and hopefully you will learn to appreciate not only your history, but the history of African Americans across this great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Aaron. Could we have another round of applause, please? So now we will hear from the students who are in the first year cohort. The first years do oral presentations, which you're about to have the opportunity to experience. The second year students have done the poster presentations that some of you saw in advance of coming into the auditorium. And then the third year students have written full-length research papers, which are available to you in a booklet that we provided earlier this evening. But now we'll hear from the first year students and hear about their work. Okay.
My name is Vivian Zeng, and I'm going to Riverside High School next year.
My name is Ellison Graham. I'm going to Northern High School next year.
My name is Alana Pettifer. I'm a rising sophomore at Early College High School.
My name is Akila Robinson, and I go to Hillside High School.
My name is Ivani Manago, and I'm going to Southern High School.
We did our presentation on media reinforcement of racial stereotypes. The media has played a big part in American culture, especially since it is reinforced by our First Amendment. However, it may often not give the most accurate portrayals of events and people. Our presentation aims to look at how the media has affected people and how it reinforces stereotypes.
I'm going to discuss how beauty is defined in the media based on race. The Ethel Waters Show was the first African American show to be on television in 1939. Before that, African Americans were only seen in television in a bad light as criminals. Because most of television were filled with white people, then they became the standard, and everyone aimed to become white people. And because there are no black people in the media, then no one was aiming to be like black people. As you can see from the chart on the top, this shows showrunners in 2015. And as you can see, majority of them are white. Because in television, majority of our showrunners are white, that means that they are the standard. Because in the entertainment industry is based on how people look or their image. And because they saw Black people in a bad image, that means that there were hardly any in the media. For the showrunners in 2016, 2017, there were 90% that were white people. So there were more white people than there were in 2015. As you can see, by the second one shows the New York Fashion Week in 2015 spring. As you can see again, majority of the models are white. And the New York industry, the modeling industry is based again on how people look and their image, and beauty. And so, because there are hardly any Black people, that shows that they see white people as more beautiful. When they asked fashion designers, according to Variety.com, why they had one or less Black person in their shows, they said that it's because that's not what they're trying to show, or it's because their public isn't ready for that many Black people in their shows. The picture at the bottom over to the side shows a doll test. The first doll test was done in the 1940s. A doll test is where it's done on mostly African-American children. They show them a Black doll and a white doll, and they ask them questions like, which one's the pretty doll, which one's the ugly doll, which one's the good doll, which one's the bad doll. Majority of the children in the 1940s said that the white doll was the good doll, and the pretty doll and the Black doll was the bad doll. Again, in 2015, they asked them the same questions on a group of African-American kids, and more than 50% of them said that the Black doll was the bad doll and the white doll was the good doll. When they asked them why the white doll is the good doll, majority of them said that it's because the white doll has blue eyes or blonde hair. When they asked why the Black doll is the bad doll, they said because it has darker skin. Because of this, and African-American teens would be insecure, and because of that, they're going to take a bad path, and they will have a worse image in the media. And a bad image to people, image means beauty, and because we African Americans have a bad image, that means they're not beautiful.
Okay, so on my left you can see Gigi Hadid, and then on my right you can see an average woman like you and me. So the media gives more coverage. Sorry to all the women in the audience. The media gives more coverage to models like Gigi Hadid because, oh, she's thin and she's pretty. You can go to any tabloid and see, oh, who she's dating or if she's doing this, that, and the other. But if you look at plus-size models such as Ashley Graham, she only got famous because she was modeling for a brand like Nike, and not because of how good her walk was or how good she was at her job, just because of what brands she was working for. And a perfect example of how the bias is towards thinner models is in the top 50 models for 2016, there was only one plus-size model, and that was Ashley Graham. So how does this affect the clothes that we buy in stores? So maybe one day you go into Forever 21 and you wear a large, but then you go into H&M and then you're a medium. H&M wants to be more compelled to buy that shirt because you feel thinner, and that's why the media put these images in your head of being thinner is better. And so clothing companies take advantage of that so you can buy their clothes when they make shirts and dresses seem smaller than they actually are. Original sizing charts for clothing companies were very inclusive because they took the data from really thin white women, and so when they did redo the sizing charts to be more accurate for different types of bodies, many clothing companies admit to not using this sizing chart provided by the government. So the government sizing charts include petite, tall, regular, and plus size, while clothing companies mostly only include a regular, petite, or sometimes a plus size section. But this is not the same for men's clothing because men's ready-to-wear clothing has existed longer due to military and war. And also there's not a lot of body variancy in men's versus women. You have to take in different sizes. And so this can go into the standards versus men and women. There's more pressure on a woman to look thin and be pretty versus a man. And so this can really eat at a young girl's self-esteem and can contribute to a lot of eating disorders, like anorexia and bulimia. And there's even an increase where they have eating disorder not otherwise specified because it can't be put in a regular category. Thank you.
All right. My topic is social injustice and judicial injustice. One of the ways the media puts an image on people's mind about black people is the way they're often presented on TV. When a white person commits a crime, just as a black person commits a crime, they are shown in suits and as in their high school photos, but when black people commit a crime, they're in mugshots. Another reason why the media misrepresents black people is when you look up a black person on Google, you see them in mugshots, but when you look up white people, you see 3 people smiling all together in groups. And when people of color commit the same crime as a person without color, they get, on average, 178 more days in jail than white people.
My topic was media's portrayal of African Americans. Stereotypes play a huge role in today's society, especially in the black community. Some example stereotypes are black families are unstable, black women are loud, sassy, and aggressive, and black men are nothing but thugs. African American men and women are looked at differently every day because of these stereotypes. Shows and movies similar to Menace to Society and Basketball Wives shape these stereotypes. As you all can see, the media is corrupting the black community slowly, and there has to be a change for there to be future growth. And on the sides, there are 2 example pictures of the stereotypes.
I did my presentation on the model minority, how the media influences the treatment of Asians in the U.S. Okay, I'll start off with a disclaimer. When I will be referring to Asians, I'm referring to Southeast Asians and East Asians, which were the main subjects of these tests. So Asians, as many may know, are arguably the more privileged minority in America. They first arrived in the 1850s, who were Chinese immigrant workers on the railroads. They quickly became competitive because they were a cheap form of labor, but they were often discriminated against because they seemed lower and they had alien traditions that were alien to Americans. However, they attempted to prove themselves. Eventually, in World War II, the 442nd Regiment and all Nisei Regiment, consisting of Japanese, fought and won with distinction and won thousands of medals and 7 presidential unit citations. And after the war, the Asians started trying to advertise themselves in a sense, to work their way up the so-called social ladder. They began advertising their Confucian beliefs, and parents often told stories of their obedient children. This spread, and eventually, to many people, this became the truth. However, this has had a negative impact on many Asians. A survey in 2016 showed that many Asians in the U.S., Asian college students, thought and considered themselves outsiders. And it also puts a lot of educational pressure on them because teachers tend to expect Asian students to do better. It also has led to a portrayal in films and such, as it became a way for Asians to assimilate better into American culture. So often, people will think of prominent action film actors such as Jackie Chan and such. Also, there's back to the educational pressure. A 2014 study at Harvard showed that the average Asian student had to score 140 points higher on the SAT to even consider entering Harvard when compared to their standard white counterparts. Throughout our presentation, we hope you have seen how the media widens the gap between expectation and reality, the ideal and unideal. Overall, the media has hurt many while helping few. Thus, we should all be aware of what conclusions we take from the news, the TV, the radio, or any other such forms of media. Thank you.
My name is Ruben, and I go to Jordan High School.
I'm Bethany Graham, and I attend Northern High School.
I'm Samuel Dixon, and I attend Early College High School.
I'm Sanaa Pace, and I attend Early College High School.
I'm Jaslyn Moore, and I go to Monterey Trail High School.
We are doing racial discrimination in the American legal system.
Our presentation delves into the corruption and consequences in the American criminal justice system. First, we will be discussing colorism, then police brutality, then prosecutorial discretions, discrimination in sentencing, and finally, collateral consequences for ex-convicts.
My topic is colorism. Colorism started during slavery. It first became known when black and whites bore children of mixed ancestry. And so if you had any trace of black ancestry, that automatically meant that you were black, also known as the one-drop rule. Slave owners gave more privileges to the lighter-skinned slaves because they saw them as smart and more capable to do more things. In the media, women with lighter skin are portrayed more often than women with darker skin. For example, in the movie Baggage Claim, all the women that were in the movie were light-skinned, but yet all the men were darker-skinned. That is because women are known to be more attracted to darker-skinned males. Yet, while in magazines, they light and darker skin tone women and males, states Urban Time magazine, while Ebony magazine has many different models that have different races and different skin tones. In the criminal justice system, most of the time, people with lighter skin receive a shorter sentence than people with darker skin. Oops. This is because lighter skins are seen as whites, and whites most of the time have shorter sentences than black people for the same crime committed. Researchers found that light-skinned women were sentenced to approximately 12% less time behind bars than their darker-skinned cohorts. Also, people with lighter skin serve 11% less time in prison than darker-skinned people. This graph is the probability of arrest. So as you can see, black people have a 33% chance of getting arrested, while black people with darker skin have a 42% chance, white people have an 11% chance, and white people with Afrocentric features have a 24% chance.
Okay, so I did my topic was police brutality in Chicago. Police brutality in Chicago is an issue because policemen, mostly white men, are killing unarmed citizens of color, and they're getting away with murder because they were in danger or they felt like they were fearful of people who were unarmed or they were people of color. To stop the issue, I would suggest racially diversifying the law enforcement business. And I would say body and dash cams also, but as you can see, sometimes in the media you'll see cases where an unarmed colored citizen has been shot and they have body and dash cam film that they show to the judges, but they still don't get justice for the families of the victims. In order to stop the issue, some police departments actually reach out and talk to the people in the cities and neighborhoods of the victims who's been shot, and they try to build relationships with the families there. And people like the Black Lives Matter movement and the NAACP are organizations that do nonviolent protests to get their point across. Between 2009 and 2013, 79% of citizens who were shot by Chicago police were African American, 13% were Latino, 8% were white. In Chicago, there are 32.9% African Americans, 31.7% whites, 28.9% Hispanics, 5.5% are Asians, and about 4 out of every 5 people shot by Chicago police officers in the past 6 years were African American males. In this chart, it talks about the demographics of the people shot. In 2010 to 2015, 528 bullets were fired, and out of those 528 bullets that were fired, 262 people were actually shot. Out of those people, 210 were black, 35 were Hispanic, 14 were white, and 2 were Asian.
Even before a person has a trial, their race affects decisions regarding their prosecution. In this country, minorities are detained far more often than they are released pre-trial. A main factor of this is unaffordable bail amounts. Reliance on a money-based pretrial system automatically disadvantages people of color who are most likely living in poverty. Temporary incarceration may degrade the defendant, make it harder for them to gather a defense, disrupt family life and employment. Other than being able to afford bail, many people of color have to put all of their trust into a public defender because they cannot afford a more experienced private defender. Whether or not a person is guilty, having poor representation may lead to a guilty conviction. As you can see from this graph, 34% of people who had their bail bond set were detained because they cannot afford bail. A solution to this problem is to closely monitor prosecutorial guidelines for bail. We should also make sure that charge and release recommendations align with state and national policies.
I'm talking about discrimination in criminal justice for sentencing. Discrimination for life sentencing is giving a white man less time than a black man for the same crime. The other reason is giving a light-skinned man less years than a darker man and they're the same race. African-American born boy has a 1 in 3 chance of ending up in prison when they are older. When we think of racism, slavery, and Jim Crow come to mind, but we don't think of the many African Americans locked up in prison as a form of racism today. The criminal justice system is racist and discriminates against African American males to ensure that they are locked up in prison. According to criminologist Robert Tillman, on an average day in the U.S., 1 in every 4 African American men ages 20 to 29 are either in prison, jail, or probation. In our criminal justice system, African Americans and whites for the same crime are arrested at very different rates, are convicted at very different rates, and receive very different sentences. However, the study revealed that our society's racism extends deeper. Black applicants with no criminal record were no more likely to get a job than white applicants with criminal record just released from prison. A few states have a population more than half black: Alabama, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and many more. Maryland has a prison population that's 72% black. African males are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated than white males. Today, African Americans are more likely to spend time in prison for drug-related offenses than their white counterparts.
I would like to talk about collateral consequences for ex-convicts. After ex-convicts complete their sentences, they often find their privileges revoked and opportunities blocked. I focus on unemployment, on housing and on neighborhood disparities. In 37 states, employers are given authority in considering the criminal status of the applicant, which in turn can impact employment prospects. Additionally, engaging in occupational positions without a professional license could result in reoffending and lead to reincarceration. Overall, the chances of ex-convict receiving a long-term, high-paying job are low. Access to public housing or housing in general can be tough for ex-convicts. The Supreme Court ruled that tenants can be convicted based on assumptions of criminal activity. Without housing, ex-convicts can lose their children and prohibit them from probating their family inheritance. It is not proven, but it could be one of many factors affecting the wealth gap. The ex-convict population is disproportionate, consisting of more blacks than whites. One of the questions that I had was if it was in large part because of the neighborhoods that they lived in. The answer was yes, somewhat. Incarceration removal rate was 40 times greater in black communities, with the highest rate compared to the highest rate in white communities. Even so, there is not enough information to conclude that this disparity solely affects black ex-convicts more than white ex-convicts. Because this system of recidivism is institutionalized through the use of laws, increasing number of prisons, lobbying efforts, moreover, is supported by public opinion, so the chances of resolving this issue are bleak. Nonetheless, it is imperative to acknowledge the consequences that ex-convicts face in this cycle. As you can see, this graph represents the number of prisoners retracted into the prison system, and in the span of 5 years, majority of ex-convicts are rearrested, reincarcerated, or reconvicted. It is not just collateral consequences that contribute to these rates, but also the direct consequences that come with criminal convictions, such as prison, fines, and probation.
In conclusion, minorities are treated unequally compared to their white counterparts. Colorism continues to be unrecognized in the criminal justice system. It is unacceptable that people receive harsher sentences for similar crimes.
These legal inequalities hinder people's ability to prosper economically, socially, and eventually aid to the repeating cycle of incarceration. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kip Leggett, and I go to Carrington Middle School.
My name is Winter Henderson, and I'm attending Githens Middle School.
My name is Thomas Bennett, and I go to Githens Middle School. Our topics all happen around the world, and they're all international issues. They need to be solved. Our topics are modern-day slavery, the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, LGBT inequalities, and immigration. I focused on modern-day slavery. There are 5 types of modern-day slavery today, and that's sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, forced labor, domestic servitude, and forced child labor. An example of sex trafficking is prostitution, as the result of force or threats. Child sex trafficking is when a child or a person under 18 is recruited, harbored, or transferred to perform a commercial sex act. Forced labor is sometimes also referred to as labor trafficking, such as recruiting and harboring. Involuntary domestic servitude is a form of human trafficking found in distant circumstances. And forced child labor, although children may legally engage in work, they can also be found in slavery or slavery-like situations.
So I chose the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What is the U.S. involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? So we start off with history. Palestine was once run by the Turks, but after World War I, it was run by the British because the British won. For the Palestine helping them, they gave Palestine the land. But at the same time, the British gave Israel the same land after the Holocaust. So money. U.S. gives $121 billion to Israel over the past decade. and U.S. gets money from its taxes. Last year, U.S. gave $38 million in military aid to Israel. Peace. U.S. and the world have held peace meetings to try to resolve the conflict. First two, the Resolution 242 and Camp David Accords, are making a good relationship between Israel and Muslim-majority countries. The last one, the Oslo Agreement, is making a good relationship between Israel and Palestine, but fortunately that resulted in the Israeli Prime Minister being assassinated. So who benefits from this agreement? So on the graph, you can see that the Israelis get more money than Palestinians from the United States. So the United States is helping these inequalities, but only supporting Israel, but not Palestine, and they're not making peace.
I chose LGBT social inequality. How are people who identify themselves as LGBT making an impact on the U.S. today, educationally and legally? LGBT gets critical because of bullying and harassment, so school leaders have to make needs for them to make them feel comfortable at the school. Legalizing same-sex marriage. The Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples could get married nationwide. HB 2 in North Carolina, House bill that restricts anti-discrimination towards transgender people. Bathroom bill in Texas. The Senate of Texas gave an approval to a bill restricting public restrooms for transgender people. And if you look in the graph here, it's a suicide attempt graph by the LGBT youth. The lowest is 8% by all teens, and the high 68%. Thank you.
Immigration and effects on children. Children who have illegal parents tend to be affected in a negative way. They are affected socially, mentally, and it affects their education. How does immigration affect children's education? The children of immigrant parents, mostly illegal mothers, tend to have fewer years in school than those whose parents are legal. The first 6 months of an immigrant parent being arrested, the child's school performance and study habits decrease. How does immigration affect children socially and mentally? Most kids become depressed from bullying and economic problems. Most immigrants can't afford many things like U.S. citizens. They struggle paying bills and because of the minimum wage. This causes children to feel hopeless and depressed because they feel like they can't help their parents. Our conclusion. All of our topics tie into each other. Like in Israel, the LGBTQ Palestinian prisoners are just now given the same rights. This has been demanded by the Association of Civil Rights of Israel. Within the prison system, Palestinian prisoners are often exploited by the Israeli government for economic purposes, for a form of forced labor within a country, which could be compared to a form of modernized slavery in the forms of forced labor and spending less on products for the Palestinian prisoners. Israel is very tough on illegal immigration from Africa. In 2015, Israel sent letters to the 45,000 Sudanese refugees that stated they have 30 days to take $3,500 and one-way ticket back to their country or to an unnamed country in Africa, or face incarceration in the Saharium prison. A solution to this is the UN to hold a meeting within the countries of the world so we can be aware of the problem and take steps to solving it.
My name's Tyree Lowe. I go to Southern Durham High School.
I'm Jordan Biggs, and I attend Early College.
I'm Lauren Futrell, and I currently attend Githens Middle School.
My name is Inka Jassa, and I attend Durham School of the Arts.
My name is Elson Roken, and I will be going to Jordan High School next year.
Our presentation will look at the impact of wealth inequalities in America. So all of our topics that we research have to deal with the wealth gap, and we'll begin by looking at the wealth gap in general, and then we'll delve deeper into certain aspects of it, including the wealth gap among Native Americans, wealth gap regarding retirement, the wealth gap and its impact on healthcare, gentrification, and finally, environmental justice.
My topic about closing wealth gaps in America. Wealth is an abundance of valuable possession of money, and household wealth gathers the sum of assets, houses, cars, savings, and checking accounts. This picture shows the median net worth from 2005 to 2009. Whites have more money than the Hispanics and Blacks over the past 4 years.
I focused on the wealth gap within Native American communities. The reason this wealth gap within Native American communities exists because mainly of tribal status, because this tribal status awards certain government benefits. As you can see from the chart, in terms of median wealth, median assets, Cherokees have far more valuable assets than the others listed on the chart. This is mostly because of casinos which are granted to the Cherokees by the government. As a matter of fact, in 2008, according to an article published by the Cherokee Casino, they were able to give $416.8 million back into the Cherokee community. Another way that it assists in the wealth gap is by eliminating liabilities through programs such as Indian Affairs, Indian Health Services, and the reservation hospitals, as well as other government benefits from other certain government agencies. Thank you.
I focused on wealth and income and how it affects different racial groups. As Tyreek said, the wealth gap is huge and is continuing to grow. Income, retirement, and wealth are all huge parts of the wealth gap, and they intertwine with each other. Income and wealth is a huge part of the wealth gap. African Americans have a struggle to get the access of money they need to pursue life. They either don't get a job or don't have the opportunity to try and get a job. Wealth affects African Americans because African Americans don't have high wealth averages as so their white counterparts. So therefore, it's harder for them to have a more pursuing retirement. As you can see in the chart, there's a huge gap between the Asian American and the African American and median household income. For wealth, the median average wealth for a white household is $120,000, for blacks, $104,000, and Hispanics or non-white, $102,000. Thank you.
I'm going to be talking about gentrification. I'll be addressing the 3 causes and effects of gentrification, beginning with redlining. Redlining began in the 1930s and ended in the late 1970s. Redlining's goal was to separate whites and blacks by housing districts. How this was done was by imposing higher loans, interest, rent, and property taxes on black people. This effectively trapped them into city centers. Whites then moved from city centers to the suburbs because where they lived alongside blacks was deemed low income. So now we had a concentration of black people in city centers and white people in the suburbs. Nowadays, in 2017, we actually have a reversal of that called urban growth, where white people are moving from the suburbs and back into city centers. They are fixing the infrastructure and raising the property value of their house. Raising the property value on one house raises the value on other houses in that area. Higher property value misleads people in the area that are in charge of mortgage rates that the people that are living there are making more money, which is not the truth, causing there to be an increase of property tax and rent rates for the people that are living there. People of color, particularly black people, are unable to meet these rates and have to leave to areas of lower income, effectively displacing them. In Durham, North Carolina, where we live, as we see an increase of jobs and community centers, gentrification is starting to take place. According to Lisa Sorg, since 2005, the median home prices have increased from 100% to 400% in 6 of Durham's central neighborhoods. This graph is a direct correlation to all the problems that I have discussed. Over the course of 10 years, more white people are moving into city centers, with the most drastic increase being in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with an increase of 7.2% in 2000 to 45.9% in just 10 years. Thank you.
For my research, I chose to do environmental justice. Environmental racism is a theory that low-income communities, and predominantly communities of color, are disproportionately exposed to hazardous substances within their environment. While this practice is present in numerous low socioeconomic communities, I chose to focus on the Native American population. Attached to my slide, I have a picture of the Lakota Sioux tribe of North Dakota protesting the Dakota Access Pipeline. The oil pipeline threatened to not only go through their sacred land, but taint their water source. Unfortunately, shortly after assuming office, President Trump approved the construction of this pipeline, and so far it has sprung 4 leaks. While natural disruptions are a large aspect of environmental discrimination, it's not the only problem. Food insecurity is a large issue that must be addressed. Food deserts are described as areas with little to no access to fresh food and produce. A study conducted this year found that among the Cherokee tribes in southeastern Oklahoma, 68% of those surveyed reported having inadequate food quality. This inadequate food quality had a direct correlation with their health, as over 50% reported suffering from diabetes and/or hypertension. Alcohol exploitation is also another large issue that disproportionately affects the Native American community. Alcoholism has long been a disease that disproportionately affected the Native American population. In an effort to curb the trend, many reservations attempted to put in place laws restricting the consumption of alcohol on their land. Companies who recognized the crutch these people were standing on began to exploit their inability to consume alcohol for profit. The Pine Ridge Reservation in North Dakota, which has 4 liquor stores and a 240-yard proximity to their land, was exposed to nearly 5 million bottles of malt liquor and cans of beer in 2010, despite their policy against alcohol consumption. These corporations exploit Native Americans' inability to drink in their homes for a quick profit.
In conclusion, as you've seen from our presentations, the wealth gap is in effect and increasing, causing a wide gap between the rich and the poor. The wealth gap affects so many things, such as the employment of Native Americans and the division between racial groups. Gentrification and healthcare are the spawns of wealth, affecting who and which racial group is granted special treatment. Wealth can also determine how different racial groups are treated in their environment. So what we wanted you to learn was that wealth is increasing and it's having an effect on America, and we should figure out ways how to combat and help shorten the wealth gap. Thank you.
My name is Jacob Adams, and I attend Hillside High School.
My name is Joshua Nicholson, and I attend Riverside High School.
My name is Laura Searles, and I attend Jordan High School.
My name is Ayunda Ajasa, and I attend Durham School of the Arts.
My name is Angeli Novio, and I attend Jordan High School.
My name is Naila Harrison, and I attend Durham School of the Arts, and we'll be talking about inequalities in American education. Education is the foundation for a stable livelihood in America. Because of this, the lack of opportunities provided for people of color and socioeconomically disadvantaged families both widens the achievement gap and the wealth gap, preventing particular individuals from advancing at the same rates as their non-economically challenged white peers.
This evening, I will be discussing the effects of the wealth gap and the effects on education. Wealth is an abundance of valuable possessions and money that can be passed down from generation to generation. The wealth gap is a gap created to represent the economical imbalance of wealth
distribution of the world. First, we must know what wealth net is. It is your assets minus your liabilities. Your assets can range from houses, cars, and liquid assets such as cash. Liabilities are car loans, payday loans, mortgages, and any unpaid expenses. This affects minorities because there is no buildup of wealth, ultimately resulting in the further expansion of the wealth gap. And minorities fail to obtain the proper education and wealth that they need to go to college so they can close the wealth gap, compared to wealthier families where they live in proper neighborhoods, where they receive the proper education so they can get scholarships. And even if they don't get the scholarships, the family still has enough wealth so that they can go to college. And as you can see in the graph, this shows the wealth divide between different races as of January 2016.
As we have stated, education has been a good first step and foundation for African Americans. But is education always the ideal process to create equity for all? For a long time, education was a key to success for many African Americans during times such as the 19th and 20th century, where we saw change from slavery to the civil rights movement. However, with the shape of current day society and the multidimensional theories, processes, and ordeals of the 21st century, education has become smoke and mirrors for many African Americans. As the wealth gap continues to spread at a high rate between white Americans and African Americans, it has been proven that education can only get you but so far. As the graph depicts, a white high school dropout has a greater wealth than a black with a college degree. I'm pretty sure Dr. Darity can attest to that, since this is some of his best research. Many may be confused by the statistic, so then the question is posed: what steps can African Americans take to potentially eliminate societal issues such as the wealth gap without accentuating education as a primary solution? Because as you can see, studying hard isn't enough. These issues could stem from the quality of education African American citizens receive, the communities we live in, or the atmospheres we choose to dwell in. Thank you.
Wealth provides choice of housing and schooling. Wealthier families have access to higher property value neighborhoods, which feeds into the local school system through property tax. This often leaves minorities in lower value neighborhoods in worse off schools. A study in Pennsylvania by Erica Frankenberg and others found that, quote, especially black students tend to leave more racially diverse traditional public schools for more segregated charter schools, end quote. Charter schools attract disproportionate amounts of minorities because they offer an alternative to underfunded institutions that kids without the wealth to move would go to. As you can see by the graph, charter schools in DC comprise a majority of economically disadvantaged students as well as African American students. Compared to their public school counterparts, students in charter schools are more likely to show mastery of both reading and math concepts, sometimes with less funding per pupil. However, money alone does not define a quality education. Other important factors include qualified teachers, student engagement, type of learning activities, and so much more.
I'll be discussing the achievement gap that exists in American education. The achievement gap refers to the gap that exists between groups and students, primarily whites and students of color. There are many factors that influence this achievement gap. One factor is race. Students of color face stress from perceived discrimination from their teachers and peers, and also stereotype threat from society. To try and reduce their stress, students of color try and devalue the importance of school, impacting their quality of education. Another factor is socioeconomic status. Children from wealthy families perform better than those in poor ones. As you can see in the graph, a child in a welfare family, usually a minority student, is exposed to 500 words from 10 to 36 months, while one in a professional family, usually a white student, is exposed to over 1,000 words in that same exact time period. This gap already exists at a young age, and it only gets bigger as these kids get older. Another factor is access to literacy. Low-income families live in book deserts. These are places where it's really hard to find a book. A real-life situation of this is if a kid from a low-income family enters school not knowing how to read, but a kid from a wealthy one enters school knowing how to read, by the time the kid from the low-income family finally learns how to read, the kid from the wealthy family would have moved on to more advanced books, thus widening the achievement gap. This achievement gap can be seen in course selections such as honors and AP classes and gifted education.
So, academically or intellectually gifted programs, AIG programs, also feed into the achievement gap. Looking at this graph, about 6% of the student population are in AIG programs, but almost 8% of white students are recommended to receive these gifted services. So a cause of these unequal numbers could be teacher impact and the wealth impact. Teachers have the most impact because they have the ability to recommend and nominate students to go in these programs. A 2005 study stated that white teachers have lower expectations for Black students with economically unstable backgrounds compared to white students with economically stable backgrounds. And the cause of this could be the unfamiliarity they have with the gifts. They have of the gifts that Black and Hispanic students have that are also apparent in white students. In 2012, 80% of US teachers were white. Looking back at the graph, there's a clear correlation. More white teachers means more white students in AIG programs. Wealth is another leading factor. Tests determine eligibility into the programs, but retakes can happen if parents are willing to pay. And knowing the wealth gap, whites make over 2 times the wealth than Black and Hispanics do. Even extracurricular programs like Duke Tip, which was coincidentally the classroom right across from us, they require achievement test scores, including the ACT or the SAT, which aren't always free. And financial aid for the opportunities in Duke Tip don't always cover all expenses.
These children placed into the AIG and gifted programs have a direct pipeline into the honors and AP classes provided in both middle and high school. Because of that, the racial disparities found in these gifted and AIG programs offered in elementary school are seen if you were to peer into an honors or standard classroom today. In a study published this year, it stated that both teacher expectation and involvement were key factors in a student's decision to join the more rigorous courses where they often feel alienated and at a disadvantage. A study done in 1979 by Mary Lee Taylor found that Black and African American students were found to not receive the same amount of attention, praise, nor ridicule as their white peers. In addition to a student's teacher's expectations of their capabilities playing into the student's decision of getting into more rigorous courses, peer and family attitudes towards both education and these advanced classes play into these decisions. As you can see on the graph, 70% of teachers found that less than 10% of their AP students were African American, in comparison to the 70% of teachers who found that over 75% of their students were white. Overall, the lack of diversity in these more advanced classes widens the achievement gap, thus widening the wealth gap as a whole, lack of opportunity given to people of particular backgrounds, overall preventing them from achieving high levels of education.
Education is one of America's many basic human rights, and factors such as race, class, and parental education should not cause educational attainment to be any less for any group of individuals. With the information we all now have, it is important that we advocate for strong educational policies in Durham County and Durham Public Schools to ensure that all kids from all backgrounds are at the same level in education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you to the students for their hard work. And for exploring a wide range of critical issues that confront us now. So I'd like to call the third-year students to the stage one by one to give them their graduation certificates from the program. So first, Amazinde Adi. Bolu Ajasa. Timur Berry. This is my man from way back. Sydney Grissom. Elijah King. Kennedy Ruff. And there's a reason why they have the same last name, Rachel Ruff. So I understand that you all have something you would like to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, go ahead. Does anybody want to speak on behalf of everybody?
How are y'all? I started this program in the summer after 7th grade as a rising 8th grader. And over the course of the 3 years participating in this program, I realized that there is much to be done in the community today. I thank everyone at the Samuel DuBois Center, just like the other people in my group here, for their continuous efforts to open our eyes to the disparities present in the world today. And it has been an awesome journey with the group, the third-year group, and I look forward to watching this program grow, and so do the rest of us. Thank you.
We would like to have Mr. Beeman, Ms. Malone, Dr. Wright, Dr. Darity, Dr. Bullock, and Todd come up, please. Sorry. And on behalf of my cohort, we just want to say thank you for an amazing 3 years. And it's a bittersweet moment now that it's over. So we have cards. Yeah, 3. Here. Here you go, Todd. Dr. Bullock. And Dr. Wright. Thank you.
Good evening. On behalf of Durham Public Schools, I would like to thank scholars, families, and educators for their participation in this year's Summer Research Institute. Our superintendent, Dr. Burt Lum, wanted to be here this evening, but couldn't due to a medical emergency. He sends his regards and congratulations to all students for their accomplishments in research this summer. Can we give just one more, or at least one more round of applause for our students this year? I have to celebrate each and every one of them for coming up here, especially our first year students, for coming up here on this stage in front of you all. That is a daunting, intimidating task, and they rose up to the occasion and did a great job. So I look forward to continuing to see great things from them throughout the school year. My work in the district, I'm often in the schools, and I get to see them and see them at work very often, and sometimes just socializing during lunch or whatever when I run into some kids at Riverside or wherever I might be. But I look forward to seeing them continuing their work here and their critical thinking throughout the school year. For those that don't know, I started my work earlier this year as the Executive Director for Equity Affairs for the school system. And in this work, I work with community members, families, students, and educators to address some of the equity issues that we see in our district. Particularly, I look at how we might modify our existing practices so that we might have more equitable and better outcomes for students of color in our district. The Young Scholar Summer Research Institute is a prime example of the type of educational opportunity that we want for all of our students. An experience that is real, an experience that is relevant, and an experience that is geared towards cultivating engaged citizens that will move our society to higher levels never before seen. This is education at its highest level, and I thank the Cook Center for their support of this program. And most of all, I thank the students for their hard work over the last 3 weeks to put all together that you see this evening. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. And we'd like to close this evening's program with some words from Mr. Samuel DuBois Cook Jr.
Dr. Darity, staff members of the Cook Center, students, teachers, Duke University, the Cook family would like to offer a heartfelt thank you for this amazing summer program. We would like to offer a special congratulations to the students that were accepted and participated in the Young Scholars Summer Research Institute. The excellence exhibited by all of you has just been awe-inspiring. You all are young, gifted, and are on your way to becoming future leaders and role models. We appreciate you. We would also like to congratulate Dr. Darity for the wisdom of having Billye S be the keynote speaker for this capstone event. The Aaron's commitment to providing opportunities and for espousing excellence within our youth has been limitless. Through their Chasing the Dream Foundation and their continuous support of the UNCF, they have inspired young people worldwide to fulfill their God-given potential. I am assured that my father would be especially proud and honored to have Mrs. Aaron address this capstone event. My father possessed a great deal of love, respect, and admiration for the Aarons' lifelong commitment to education as a means of achieving social equity. Thank you, Dr. Darity, for inviting my mother and my children who are present, as well as for inviting my wife and my sister, who unfortunately could not be here and were not able to attend this inspiring and wonderful event. Thank you again, Dr. Darity, and thank you to the Cook Center.
So that concludes this evening's program. Please enjoy the libations and the cuisine that awaits you in the reception area.